And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist John Cowen with your Alaska aviation forecast. We'll start off taking a look at flying weather across the state for Thursday morning. You can see we have broad areas of IFR stretching across much of the western portions of Alaska as we have a front that'll be moving across the area, bringing unsettled weather again to much of the state. Low pressure also persists across the Gulf of Alaska into the Panhandle, bringing unsettled weather across much of that region. IFR expected there. We do have some clearing conditions though across the eastern interior, at least, with some high pressure building in from Canada, helping to keep conditions VFR in that area. As we get into Thursday afternoon, clear conditions continue across the northern fringe of the Alaska range, but really don't extend that far north. Unsettled weather starting to build back into the northeastern portion of the state across the Brooks Range. IFR conditions do persist across the Panhandle as well and into the northern Gulf. And then by Friday morning, we're looking at, again, very broad areas of IFR across the interior. This front really doesn't want to move much over the next couple of days, so continued unsettled weather is expected, as well as portions of the Alaska range, keeping that IFR into Friday morning. Still some clearing on the north side of the range, but again, a very narrow band of VFR weather there. And the Panhandle does continue to hang on to IFR into Friday morning, and then slowly starting to clear out from the south by Friday afternoon. Marginal conditions across much of the Panhandle with that IFR in the northern Panhandle and higher terrain. Again, areas of IFR across the western portions of Alaska into the northeast. So really looking at pretty active weather over the next few days across mainland Alaska, and marginal conditions expected across much of the Bering. Very little change in this area. Let's take a look at our passes. We'll start out with the Anaktuvuk Pass in the Brooks Range, expecting IFR conditions Thursday. Same story in Adigan. We'll start the day out in MVFR territory, but as the afternoon progresses, IFR is expected to build back into that area. Coming down to the Alaska Range, Lake Clark and Merrill passes, both IFR. However, you do notice that on the western portions, again, the western and northern areas of the Alaska Range, we are going to hang on to VFR conditions there. Same story in Rainy Pass, IFR, with VFR conditions near the western entrance. Windy Pass will also be IFR for Thursday, again with VFR conditions on the northern portion of that pass. Isabel Pass, MVFR conditions for Thursday, and then going over to Mentasta, we do expect VFR for that area. Coming down to Tanita Pass, MVFR conditions expected for Thursday, and then Portage Pass expected to be IFR, with MVFR conditions prevailing near the western entrance getting into or towards the Anchorage Bowl. And then finally across the northern Panhandle, Chilkoot and White Pass, both at IFR expected Thursday. Taking a look at our freezing levels. Freezing levels again do continue to slowly creep north over the next couple of days. You do notice that we have some warm air intruding aloft well into the eastern interior, getting up even close to the Brooks Range with freezing levels approaching 4,000 feet for some areas of the interior. However, surface temperatures will remain below freezing for most of mainland Alaska. However, as we get down towards the Panhandle, we do see freezing levels start to increase again up towards 6,000 feet in the northern Panhandle and up to 8,000 feet over portions of the southern Panhandle. Taking a look at our icing conditions. For Thursday, we would expect some areas of potential moderate icing across southeastern Alaska into south central. We're looking at above 4,000 feet for most of the Anchorage Bowl, getting into Prince William Sound, and then by the time we get to the southern Panhandle, icing it would be expected above 8,000 feet. We have some isolated areas across much of the interior, looking at about surface to about 10,000 feet for just some isolated areas of icing. And then as we get towards the far western Aleutians, we're looking at above 2,000 feet for some isolated areas of icing as well. Taking a look at our jet stream, we have a core of some pretty strong winds across the Gulf of Alaska. 135 knots way out there, but as we get towards the Panhandle of Alaska, we're looking at about 80 to 90 knots out of the south to southwest for most areas. Getting into the 9,000 foot level. Again, same areas, but winds generally around 65 knots in that offshore area, coming down to about 40 to 55 across most areas of the Panhandle, and even extending as far west as Prince William Sound. And then coming down to 3,000 feet, we do have some pretty strong low-level winds across the northern Gulf Coast, around 45 knots near the immediate coast. Offshore areas pushing 70 knots in that area. And then across the western Alaska or western Brooks Range, we do have some stronger low-level winds around 45 to 50 knots in the Point Hope area. And then taking a look at our turbulence, we have areas of moderate turbulence expected for Thursday across portions of the Panhandle, again extending into the Prince William Sound area and Copper River Valley. Surface to about 6,000 feet broadly is what we're looking at for this area. And then up over northeast or northwestern Alaska, surface to about 4,000 feet for those areas of moderate turbulence. And then finally coming down to the Aleutians, some stronger winds here leading to some turbulence. Surface to about 3,000 feet is what we're looking at for this area. And that'll wrap up our aviation forecast. I'm meteorologist John Cowen.